Dude, I was truly just devastated at the death of Eddie Van Halen this month. Like, what? Like, what? Eddie? Dead? I can't even describe how upset I was to hear that we lost such a legend. Eddie Van Halen truly was a master at guitar. He was truly a guitar genius. And I'm so sad I will never ever get to see him solo live. It was on my list of things that I wanted to see in concert, and now it's just so devastating. He had been fighting cancer for a very long time, and the fact is that, he ended up succumbing to it. It's just so devastating that another person has to succumb to this horrible, horrible disease. It's one of those stars, celebrity rock stars, words. He was one of those rock stars that just seemed immortal to me. I don't know. It's kind of like David Bowie to me. Like, I never could imagine that David Bowie was going to die. And here we are now with Eddie Van Halen, the same thing. One of the things I remember about Eddie is that warm smile he had when he played. It just showed how much he did enjoy what he did and how much he cared about what he was doing. And I just think that's one of the things that always was a cement of Eddie Van Halen to me. So what I wanted to talk about today, because I just want to talk about what I want to talk about, I want to do a quick little thing about Eddie. I wanted to talk about his, in my opinion, underrated fashion style. Yes, that is a weird thing to talk about with something like him, because he's mostly just known for playing guitar amazingly, but Eddie has a really underrated style, and I don't think enough people talk about how cool his fashion clothing style was. So guess what? I'm going to talk about it. Deal with it. I just wanted to highlight another cool thing about him, So the little disclaimer, when I do talk about his style, I'm mainly going to cover his days in Van Halen pre-Sammy Hagar. So commercial peak Van Halen, when David Lee Roth was still the front man of the band. So usually when you think of Van Halen, I guess for me personally, when I think of Van Halen, I don't think of Sammy Hagar era Van Halen. I think of 70s and early 80s Van Halen. That's just me. But, I'm not a big fan of the Sammy Hagar era, but that's my opinion. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Why are you going now, of all times? Sorry, my computer is being stupid. So, Eddie had a very simplistic but unique style. It is, as you would say, simple, but he still made it his own, if you think about it. How do I put it? It was the details, the small little details that made the outfit work. Him and his brother Alex, who was on drums, obviously, they were operating as a band since most of the 70s, till in the late 70s Van Halen would obviously get their big break in their recording contract and release all their great albums that would follow up until Sammy Hagar, obviously. Because Van Halen operated for a long time in the 70s, obviously we're going to see Eddie in things that were often trendy to a lot of attire in the 1970s. Such as high-waisted, very tight pants that are either straight boot cut or flared or bell-bottomed, high-heeled platform shoes, sneakers, tight shirts, long hair, flashy, more feminine-leaning clothing, and also stripe patterns. And stripes were something that Eddie made a trademark of himself for his symbolism and aesthetics. In the 70s, stripes were very popular, especially with the popular earthy or monochromatic color schemes that were big of that decade. One of the outfits I want to highlight in particular is the outfit he wore in a performance that would become the music videos for their cover of You Really Got Me and their songs Running with the Devil and Jamie's Crying. The first time I saw Eddie was the You Really Got Me music video, and his outfit had this like run-of-the-mill 70s stripe pattern shirt and like these brown, earthy, monochromatic, earthy tones in the shirt that were very popular at the time, and then these brown leather bell bottoms. And that outfit was so much more on the simpler side for what rock stars usually wore in the 70s, but at the same time, it still fit in, because despite it being simple, it still had a lot going on to just really work, and just, oh my god, I loved it. Like, it caught my eye. And, you know, Eddie was the first person I really took to when I saw the music video for the first time, because he just looks so cool. Like, that curly hair shaped thing he got going on with his hair, like that long but like kind of frizzy but curly hair. And then the whole, like, he just looks so flattering in that outfit. Like, it just really like highlighted him with his whole getup. And, you know, I totally wanted to get a striped shirt that was kind of 70s-esque when I saw it. Obviously, I wouldn't look that good in it. Eddie literally made me want to get like more striped stuff. I've always been scared to wear stripes because of my body type, but you know what? If Eddie can wear it, I can wear it. But you see, Eddie did look better in me because Eddie's just a better looking person to me. But yeah, you know, I found this really cool striped shirt at a thrift store because I love to go thrifting, because, you know, I'm one of those chicks. And it was very similar kind of to the patterning that was on Eddie's shirt, because I always often look to those rock stars that I like for inspo, so I had to get this. It was pretty cheap too. So, you know, stripes would be a reoccurring thing with Eddie all the way up until, you know, now, I guess. Eddie knew how to rock stripes, and these loose but tight, simple striped button-down shirts complemented his body's silhouette so well, and he would always wear his button-down shirts in a way where it just kind of made this shape where the shirt opens up that kind of looks like the bottom of a heart. So I think that's always like cute and cool. So, you know, stripes would be a reoccurring thing with Eddie all the way up until, you know, now. Any kind of graphic based line pattern always seemed to be a very big thing with Eddie. Even his world famous guitar, usually still in those reds and monochromes and earth tones that we often see him wear, which actually look really good on him. And but he can rock any color, as we'll see longer, but I like that he tends to stick with more warm colors with a little bit of cold, but mostly more of a warm, earthy color palette with some monochrome. Even his famous guitar pattern on stuff like the Frankenstein guitar, this very chaotic stripe pattern that, you know, became a trademark for him. He actually has that same pattern on his iconic overalls, and he has merch with it, and it's just very much like this very Eddie pattern. Another interesting aspect of some of the stuff that Eddie was wearing, especially during the early 80s, weren't really that trendy to the 80s. His patchwork jeans, most famously seen in the Panama and Jump music videos, are much more of a 70s thing, along with him wearing a jacket in the Jump music video that is still very much that 70s rock star style suit jacket, and not very much the oversized, padded shoulder, sometimes double-breasted suit that became an iconic wear of the 80s, i.e., you know, the ugly Miami Vice suits, or the suits that Michael Douglas wore on Wall Street. I like that he kept his style a bit. I kind of like that he did not, you know, straight out start dressing very like 80s in the early 80s. I think that he was still a bit behind still in the 70s, because I personally just think even, you know, he just looked better in that more 70s silhouette than a lot of the 80s silhouettes that were going on. You know, I am biased because I don't particularly like a lot of silhouettes from the 80s and a lot of like clothing styles and looks, but I'm just glad that he didn't entirely jump on. Another iconic thing that Eddie wore was his jumpsuits and overalls, just like one-piece clothing in general. It just really complimented him. I think his hairstyle and facial structure contrasting with his more thin and stiff-looking body, especially because he wore like these one bold color type jumpsuits that, you know, were often on the spectrum of red shades or pink shades. So like, you know, bright red, bright pink, and they just really worked well with his dark hair. But he also wore blue ones, white ones, and he would often pair it with flat tennis-style shoes that were usually, you know, plain white with like a bold black logo. One thing about the way Eddie goes about his wardrobe is that he often sticks to a small but bold color scheme, and he relies on a more stripped-down wardrobe that just has these small details in the coloring that make it work. The color red is probably the one color I associate the most with him. His most famous guitar is mainly that color, along with his overalls that have the same pattern, and just in general, he tended to use a lot of reds in his outfits, even in subtle things like his red bandana or the red shoes that he often would wear. I think red is very much his color, and he just fits that vibe of like a bold fire engine red, if you get what I mean. Speaking of the Panama music video, you know, this look looks very random. You know, he's got this very, like, random, almost, like, thrift store chic 80s. I mean, I don't even think thrift store chic started in the early 80s. I think it was, like, more mid-80s. I have to brush up on my history of that. You know, the thrift store chic look. I know, oh, what was that band? Don't Come After Me Movers. Oh, yeah, oh, crap. I always know their name. Now I don't know their name. The B-52s! Yeah, that new wave band that did, like, you know, all those, like, really, like, throwbacky 80s does late, early 60s? You know, that campy, throwbacky, thrift store chic look. And I know, like, Cyndi Lauper was into it. It just, vintage clothing was, like, a thing, becoming more of a widespread thing. The clothing he wore during the 70s, to the peak of classic Van Halen in the early to mid-80s, very much flattered his body very well. That could be attributed to the clothing in the 70s having a very Sims silhouette style, and so he'd be able to have those designs to build on them. And a good amount of rock stars in the 70s tended to be on the thinner side in general. I honestly think Eddie's style is underrated because of how well the clothing he chose to wear complemented him, and he still looked distinct through his wardrobe itself, and even though it wasn't elaborate, his simple looks worked together so well because of his use of color and subtle structuring to bring it together with those very small details that they just make it. Yeah, Eddie was just so cool, man. Like, it's such a loss. You know, cancer is just, frick. It's such a loss that we had lost Eddie. Such a loss that we had lost. It's cool though, because me and Eddie actually share a birthday. We're both January 26th babies. Obviously, different time periods. I'm a millennial, he's a boomer, so